am Sheryl, 34 years old, and just days ago the luxury apartment and major business inheritance secretly left to me by my late father would become my greatest conflict. The very apartment I'd carefully maintained and quietly paid the expenses on, honoring Dad's quiet wishes, became the epicenter of betrayal at the annual Caldwell family dinner when my entitled step-siblings, Daryl and Bonnie, demanded I hand everything over. My refusal earned me immediate exile from my stepmother Elaine, her cold, unblinking eyes reflecting nothing but disdain. "You've always been an ungrateful outsider," Elaine spat, her words slicing through the hushed dining room as guests watched with awkward fascination. I didn't flinch at her cruelty. Instead, her words ignited a fire within me. My quiet resolve would soon shatter their carefully crafted illusion of control. But before I tell you how that dinner changed everything, let me know where you're watching from, and hit subscribe if you've ever overcome something for your family, because you have no idea what they'll do once they realize their betrayal is about to blow up spectacularly. My father, Hugh Caldwell, had always been a quiet man of great dignity, navigating life behind a subtle mask of strength. Elaine, his second wife, and her children from her first marriage, always treated Dad's kindness as weakness, eagerly taking without thanks, their greed barely concealed behind fake smiles. Daryl, forever convinced of his unearned brilliance, coasted from one nepotistic role to another, while Bonnie chased status through parties, designer labels, and hollow friendships. Together, they formed a glittering trio, constantly craving attention, validation, and material proof of their superiority. I never fit their mold. Preferring subtle success and quiet victories, I chose to build rather than boast. My passion was marketing, specifically, nurturing overlooked startups, helping businesses bloom quietly into powerhouses of their own. I thrived in the quiet, purposeful shadows, something my stepfamily could never understand or appreciate. To them, I was a dull, forgettable puzzle piece that didn't quite match their flashy image. Yet, it was me, my father secretly entrusted with his legacy, leaving behind not only a luxurious apartment overlooking Central Park, but also ownership of Caldwell Ventures, a hidden gem of his business empire. Quietly, carefully, I'd honored his faith in me, unaware that this hidden gift would soon tear apart the thin threads holding our dysfunctional family together. I wasn't prepared for how swiftly greed and entitlement could shatter fragile bonds, or how fiercely I'd need to defend my father's trust. Growing up in the Caldwell household was like existing behind a two-way mirror, observing the world clearly, yet invisible to those who claim to be family. My earliest memories revolve around holidays and birthday parties, where Bonnie's every trivial milestone was celebrated as groundbreaking, and Daryl's mediocre achievements hailed as genius. Yet, whenever my name came up, a collective silence would briefly descend, replaced swiftly by an awkward change of tone. I vividly recall my high school graduation. I'd worked diligently to graduate top of my class, an accomplishment I'd foolishly believed might finally earn a moment of recognition. Yet, as I stood there proudly clutching my diploma, my stepmother Elaine barely looked up from her phone, offering only a distracted, "Nice job, dear," before resuming her conversation about Bonnie's lavish Sweet 16 celebration planned for later that summer. College was no different. When I was offered a coveted internship with one of New York's premier marketing agencies, I excitedly shared the news at dinner. Daryl had just landed a comfortable managerial job at Caldwell Ventures, a position handed to him on a silver platter by Elaine. My stepmother's eyes sparkled with pride as Daryl smugly described his new corner office. When I mentioned my internship, Elaine's expression shifted to confusion. "Marketing?" she scoffed dismissively. "Why waste your time on such a frivolous career, Sheryl? You could have done something meaningful." I swallowed my hurt, quietly resolving to let my success speak for itself, even if my family chose deafness. From that point onward, I buried my victories deep, quietly building my resume without their knowledge, forging a path entirely separate from their expectations or approval. And when Dad quietly began noticing my hard work, slipping me subtle nods of encouragement and gentle words of pride, always careful not to let Elaine overhear, I felt seen for the first time. His acknowledgement was subtle, often just a quiet squeeze of my shoulder and a whispered, "I'm proud of you," before he vanished back behind his careful mask. His secret pride fueled me, giving me permission to flourish even as my stepfamily dismissed me entirely. When my father unexpectedly passed, grief was compounded by their coldness. At his funeral, Elaine made a tearful, showy speech about family unity and legacy, conveniently omitting my existence from her glowing recollections. Sitting quietly at the back of the church, my father's whispered words echoed inside me. My hidden strength. What my stepfamily didn't realize was that their dismissal wasn't weakening me. It was quietly preparing me for the moment I'd finally stand strong in the storm of their betrayal. The idea for Aurora Solutions came quietly, almost accidentally, at 2 a.m, as I stared blankly into the flickering glow of my laptop screen. Exhausted from another brutal day at the prestigious but emotionally draining marketing agency, my thoughts circled endlessly around a single question: why was true potential so often overlooked? I'd spent months handling high-profile campaigns for flashy brands, plastering hollow promises onto billboards and magazine covers, yet, secretly, I yearned to champion businesses that genuinely needed visibility, passionate startups with powerful stories but limited resources, companies with quiet integrity, deserving of real, lasting recognition. That's when it struck me. What if I created something designed specifically to amplify those voices? An agency driven not by status or prestige, but by authenticity, quiet strength, and genuine storytelling. Heart racing, I grabbed a pen and scribbled the concept furiously onto a crumpled notepad, suddenly energized despite my exhaustion. Aurora Solutions, named for the first light of dawn, symbolizing the quiet power of emergence and hope, would nurture hidden gems into flourishing businesses. Turning this dream into reality was harder than I'd ever imagined. Days blurred into weeks, then months, as I secretly balanced my demanding day job with late-night strategy sessions and weekend pitches. My tiny apartment became Aurora's first office, scattered with empty coffee cups and endless stacks of client proposals. Every spare moment was a relentless battle to push forward, even when it felt impossible. Yet quietly, Aurora began to thrive. My first major breakthrough was a small tech startup, Nimbus Innovations, whose CEO, Raylene, a brilliant, fiery woman who'd spent years overlooked by investors, trusted me with her brand. After sleepless nights of careful planning and meticulously tailored marketing campaigns, Nimbus soared from obscurity into sudden prominence, securing major investors and national recognition practically overnight. The quiet, transformative success of Nimbus validated everything I'd believed. Soon, word spread, and more startups began quietly seeking Aurora's expertise. Within 3 years, my modest side project had grown into an undeniable force, quietly generating millions and creating powerful success stories for countless overlooked entrepreneurs. Despite the massive triumph of Aurora Solutions, I shared this victory with no one in my stepfamily. Elaine, Bonnie, and Daryl knew only what they chose to see: the seemingly modest, easily dismissed Sheryl, who dutifully attended each family dinner and quietly endured their subtle insults. I allowed their ignorance to persist, preserving Aurora as my private sanctuary, a cherished tribute to my father's quiet faith in me. I could never have predicted just how explosively Aurora's hidden success would shatter their delusion of superiority, or the lengths they'd go to reclaim a legacy they had never earned. The calendar notification flashed quietly on my phone, a glaring reminder I'd dreaded for weeks. Caldwell Family Annual Dinner, 7 p.m. tonight. Instinctively, my stomach nodded. Each year, the event was a painful performance, an evening filled with brittle smiles, thinly veiled insults, and relentless reminders of my supposed inadequacies. This time, though, the stakes were infinitely higher. Aurora Solutions stood on the brink of a life-changing acquisition, negotiations quietly nearing completion with a prestigious international firm. Once finalized, this deal would solidify Aurora's reputation and fulfill every silent promise I'd made to myself and my father years earlier. The announcement was set to hit the headlines any day, but until then, discretion was crucial. One wrong word at dinner tonight could jeopardize everything. As evening approached, I stood nervously before the mirror, carefully adjusting the neckline of my understated black dress. I'd chosen simplicity deliberately, a shield against their predictable criticisms of extravagance or attention-seeking. But no matter how carefully I dressed or how quietly I spoke, I knew my stepfamily would find a way to twist my intentions into something sinister. With a deep breath, I stepped out of my father's luxury apartment, the one quietly entrusted only to me, and into the waiting car, feeling a bittersweet ache in my chest. Dad had always been proud of this place, a sanctuary he'd meticulously decorated with understated elegance. It represented a quiet, tangible bond between us, a secret shared amid a family who saw only competition and envy. Arriving at Elaine's sprawling mansion, the familiar grandeur felt oppressive, every polished marble floor and crystal chandelier screaming quiet disapproval. Steeling myself, I walked through the ornate front doors into the lion's den, bracing for the inevitable gauntlet of judgment. Immediately, Bonnie swooped in, her smile laced with false sweetness. "Oh, Sheryl, I see you've gone with your usual understated look," she drawled, eyeing my simple dress with exaggerated pity. "Such a shame you don't put more effort into yourself." I forced a quiet smile, refusing to rise to her bait. Daryl, smug as always, swaggered over with a dismissive nod. "Still slaving away at that little marketing thing?" he sneered. "Really thought you'd have moved on to something real by now." I bit my tongue, suppressing the urge to defend Aurora. The luxury apartment, the business inheritance, my carefully hidden empire, all remained tightly guarded secrets, held close beneath the surface of my polite replies. But as the guests filed into the dining room, I sensed something darker simmering beneath Elaine's brittle cordiality. Her gaze lingered on me too long, filled with a calculating, predatory gleam. A chill ran down my spine. Tonight felt different. Tonight felt dangerous. And somehow, I knew that the quiet battle I'd waged my entire life was about to explode spectacularly into the open. Dinner began like a carefully choreographed nightmare. The long, polished dining table shimmered beneath ornate chandeliers, reflecting tense faces and glittering silverware. Waitstaff moved silently, serving dishes meticulously selected to showcase Elaine's status. Despite the feast laid out before me, my appetite was non-existent. Every bite tasted bitter, tainted by anticipation. Bonnie and Daryl took turns volleying pointed remarks, cloaked in sugary sweetness but sharpened by disdain. "Sheryl," Bonnie began, spooning delicate portions onto her plate, "did you ever consider pursuing something truly ambitious? I mean, marketing. It seems so frivolous compared to actually running a business." Daryl chuckled knowingly, leaning back comfortably in his chair. "Exactly. Some people prefer playing in the shadows, I suppose." Their thinly veiled insults hung heavily in the air. Elaine watched silently, her eyes glinting with satisfaction. She enjoyed this subtle torment, orchestrating humiliation with the elegance of a seasoned conductor. I maintained my composure, quietly sipping water to calm the fury building within me. Every instinct screamed to defend Aurora, to reveal the truth of my success. But the timing was delicate, and secrecy remained paramount. Instead, I summoned the strength to offer polite, neutral responses, my voice steady, even as my pulse quickened. Then Elaine cleared her throat sharply, commanding attention. "Actually," she began deliberately, the corners of her mouth lifting in a cruel smile, "there is something important we need to discuss." A sudden hush enveloped the table. Every pair of eyes turned toward me, predatory and eager. My heart skipped uneasily, intuition screaming that my worst fears were about to unfold. "Sheryl?" Elaine continued coldly, meeting my gaze without hesitation. "It's time we addressed your place in this family." My stomach tightened as she produced an envelope, sliding it theatrically across the polished mahogany toward me. Hands trembling, I opened it slowly, dread pooling in my chest as I scanned the formal, coldly worded legal document. They intended to seize the luxury apartment and the ownership stake in Caldwell Ventures, my father's quiet, deliberate legacy, explicitly left to me. My heart pounded, disbelief and anger mingling chaotically. "What is this?" My voice shook, betraying my careful composure. Daryl leaned forward, smug and triumphant. "Consider it correcting a mistake. Dad clearly wasn't thinking straight when he made those arrangements." Bonnie smirked, eyes gleaming. "It's for the best, Sheryl. We can't have someone like you representing the Caldwell name." Elaine's voice was a blade of ice. "You have until tonight to vacate the apartment. From now on, you are no longer part of this family." The table erupted into hushed murmurs, eyes darting between Elaine and me. I felt their judgment, heavy and suffocating, but beneath my shock burned quiet determination. They thought they'd won, but their betrayal had ignited something within me far stronger than their contempt. They were about to discover just how dangerously they'd underestimated me. A deafening silence swallowed the room after Elaine's announcement. Her words, cold, precise, and cutting, reverberated in my ears. For a moment, shock numbed my body. The legal document trembled slightly in my hand, each page a testament to their ruthless betrayal. Daryl leaned back, folding his arms confidently. "You had to see this coming, Sheryl. It's nothing personal, just business. And honestly, you never belonged anyway." Bonnie gave a delicate shrug, examining her manicured nails as if bored by the drama. "Think of this as a fresh start. Maybe now you'll finally get the motivation you clearly lack." Elaine watched carefully, eyes glittering with quiet triumph. She had orchestrated this moment perfectly, a final stroke erasing me from their family portrait. Around us, guests exchanged nervous glances, murmurs of confusion and scandal rippling through the room. My humiliation was public, undeniable, and deliberately calculated. Yet beneath the humiliation simmered something else, a powerful, steady resolve, a realization that their cruelty had set me free. My life had been quietly bound by their dismissal and disdain for too long. Tonight was not my destruction, it was my liberation. I set the document down gently, raising my gaze to meet Elaine's icy stare, refusing to let her see my inner turmoil. "If this is how you honor my father's legacy, Elaine," I said evenly, each word quiet yet firm, "then you never truly understood him at all." Her smile faltered slightly, eyes narrowing. "Don't pretend you were ever truly part of this family, Sheryl. You were tolerated at best." The room buzzed with whispered gossip, the facade of polite society crumbling under the weight of Elaine's brazen cruelty. Bonnie and Daryl shifted uncomfortably, their smugness flickering momentarily beneath the weight of the crowd's judgmental gaze. But Elaine held firm, her face an unyielding mask of arrogance. I rose steadily from my chair, feeling every gaze lock onto me. Anger twisted briefly in my chest, but I suppressed it, channeling a quiet dignity my father had always embodied. My voice was calm, clear, unshakably confident. "If you think my father left me those assets by mistake, Elaine, you're about to be profoundly disappointed." She laughed dismissively, but I saw the first faint trace of unease flicker behind her eyes. "What could you possibly mean by that, Sheryl?" Before I could answer, a quiet vibration buzzed urgently in my purse. My breath caught. Instinctively, I knew this call would change everything. Would finally pull back the curtain and reveal my carefully hidden truth. Elaine, Bonnie, and Daryl stared suspiciously as I reached slowly into my bag, retrieving my phone. The caller ID glowed brightly, Aurora Solutions attorney. Quietly, I stepped away from the table, heart racing, and answered. The news I received in that moment would shatter their smug illusions forever. I pressed the phone tightly to my ear, the quiet voice of Aurora's lead attorney resonating clearly despite the roaring in my head. "Sheryl, it's done. The acquisition officially closed just moments ago. Aurora Solutions has been purchased for a record-breaking sum. Congratulations, you've done it." His words washed over me like sunlight after a storm, steady and reassuring. Years of secret effort, quiet struggle, and unwavering determination had finally paid off spectacularly. My quiet dream, my carefully guarded truth had become undeniable reality, just moments after my family had publicly disowned me. "Thank you," I whispered, voice thick with emotion yet remarkably steady. "I appreciate all you've done." Ending the call, I turned back to the dining room. Elaine watched warily, sensing the shift but unaware of its magnitude. Daryl and Bonnie exchanged uncertain glances, their smug expressions fading into quiet confusion. Elaine arched an eyebrow. "More bad news, Sheryl? Nothing else left to lose, I assume." A ripple of nervous laughter followed her comment, but I stood calmly, quiet strength surging through me. "Actually, Elaine, it was quite the opposite. Aurora Solutions, the little marketing thing you all love to ridicule, just closed a multi-million-dollar acquisition deal. As of tonight, Aurora is officially one of the most successful marketing consultancies in North America." Gasps filled the room, followed by stunned silence. Elaine's confident smile evaporated instantly, replaced by shock and disbelief. Bonnie's mouth hung open inelegantly, Daryl's eyes bulging as the realization dawned slowly, painfully. You built that?" Elaine stammered, disbelief cracking her composure. "You?" I smiled gently, a lifetime of quiet dismissals finally unraveling in front of everyone. "Yes, quietly, deliberately, and without needing validation from anyone here." My father believed in me, Elaine, something you never did. He entrusted me with the apartment and Caldwell Ventures precisely because he saw something in me none of you bothered to recognize. The room buzzed louder, whispers now sympathetic and admiring rather than judgmental. Elaine's carefully crafted narrative had shattered irrevocably. Daryl stood abruptly, his voice desperate, pleading, "Sheryl, surely you understand, we didn't know." Bonnie sputtered quickly, desperation clear. "We've always supported you, really." I raised my hand gently, silencing them both. "No, you haven't. And that's okay, your lack of faith didn't break me. It built me." Elaine sat frozen, suddenly small and insignificant at her own extravagant dinner. Her words were barely audible, trembling with resentment and humiliation. This changes nothing. You are still disowned." I nodded calmly, stepping away from the table with quiet certainty. "It changes everything, but Elaine, because from now on you no longer control how my story is told." With the stunned room at my back, I walked confidently toward the exit, heart filled not with bitterness but with pride, freedom, and the quiet certainty of knowing I had finally claimed my place in the world, exactly on my own terms. Elaine's mansion erupted into chaos behind me, the elegant facade dissolving rapidly as reality punctured their carefully woven illusions. As I reached the foyer, I heard Daryl frantically trying to smooth over the embarrassment, his panicked voice rising desperately above the whispered gossip. Bonnie's shrill protests rang sharply, demanding attention as she pleaded innocence and misunderstanding. Elaine, however, remained eerily quiet, her silent fury radiating like a dark storm. But none of their scrambling mattered now. Their hollow apologies, their panicked backtracking, nothing could change the truth I'd quietly purposefully revealed. Tonight had been their attempt at my destruction. Instead, it had become my liberation. As I approached the front doors, Bonnie rushed up behind me, her voice trembling with desperation. "Sheryl, please, don't do this. Think about the family." I paused at the threshold, turning slowly to face her. Bonnie, always perfectly poised and polished, now stood disheveled and breathless, her eyes wide with fear and regret. "The family?" I repeated softly. "You disowned me publicly less than 20 minutes ago, Bonnie. You didn't hesitate to throw me aside, so tell me, what family exactly should I consider?" Her mouth opened and closed silently, no words coming forth. The bitter truth hung between us, undeniable and stark. I continued gently, my voice firm yet calm. "You're upset because the world just saw exactly who you all are beneath your shiny surface, but I've known it for years." Elaine's heels clicked sharply against the marble floor as she joined us, her face pale yet defiant. "You'll regret this, Sheryl," she hissed quietly. "We could have reconciled, but you chose humiliation. There's no turning back." I met her icy gaze directly, unwavering. "You're right, Elaine, there's no turning back, but not because of anything I've done. You made that choice years ago, every time you ignored me, dismissed my dreams, or undermined my worth. Tonight wasn't about humiliating you, it was about finally standing up for myself. Your embarrassment is merely the consequence of your own hypocrisy." She recoiled visibly, anger and humiliation warring across her features. Without another word, I turned away, stepping through the mansion's grand entrance into the cool, liberating night air. Each step away from their toxic grasp filled me with quiet strength and a profound sense of freedom. As I climbed into my waiting car, my phone vibrated again, this time messages of support flooding in from friends and colleagues, my chosen family who'd stood quietly by me all along. Their warmth and genuine pride formed a stark, beautiful contrast to the emotional violence I'd endured inside. Driving away, I looked back one final time at the mansion's fading lights, feeling a calm satisfaction. They thought they'd broken me, but instead they'd unwittingly helped me become stronger, freer, and more authentically myself than ever before. Later that night, my closest friends gathered quietly in the cozy living room of the apartment, the very sanctuary my father had entrusted to me. Unlike the lavish grandeur of Elaine's mansion, this place radiated warmth, comfort, and genuine belonging. The soft glow of candles flickered gently, casting comforting shadows across familiar faces. Raylene from Nimbus Innovations, who'd trusted Aurora from the very beginning. Jonah, my steadfast attorney and longtime confidant. And Mia, my best friend since college, whose unwavering belief had kept me steady during countless silent battles. As I shared the story of the evening's explosive events, their reactions ranged from incredulous laughter to sympathetic outrage. Yet beneath every response was a steady current of unconditional support, something my biological family had always withheld. Mia shook her head, eyes wide with disbelief, her tone fiercely protective. "I honestly can't believe they thought they could just steal everything from you and get away with it." Raylene smirked knowingly, swirling her wine gently in her glass. "They completely underestimated you. I'd pay to see the look on Elaine's face again." Jonah offered a quiet, reassuring smile. "They can threaten all they want, but legally, they're powerless. Your father's wishes were crystal clear. This is your legacy, Sheryl. No one can take it from you." Their quiet strength surrounded me, easing away the sharp edges of tonight's painful confrontation. Being with my chosen family, a circle of genuine allies whose care was never transactional, felt like a balm, healing the invisible wounds of years spent quietly enduring neglect and disrespect. In the soft quiet of the apartment, I reflected on the stark contrast between tonight's two gatherings. At Elaine's table, I'd felt invisible, reduced to a mere inconvenience. Here, among those who truly knew and valued me, I felt seen, validated, and embraced exactly as I was. No expectations, no judgments. Mia raised her glass gently, her voice warm with pride. "To Sheryl, the quietest badass we know. Tonight, the world finally saw what we've known all along." Laughter filled the room, easing tension. Yet beneath it, I felt a profound gratitude for their authentic presence in my life. We clinked glasses, toasting not just Aurora's success, but something far more meaningful. The undeniable power of true connection, rooted in integrity and loyalty. Later, as my friends began to leave, offering gentle hugs and quiet assurances, I felt an overwhelming sense of peace. Tonight had proven what I'd always quietly hoped. Family wasn't merely a matter of biology. It was about choice, about surrounding yourself with those who saw your quiet strength, who cherished your authenticity without conditions. I closed the apartment door softly behind them, smiling gently to myself. The quiet war I'd fought silently for so many years had finally given way to a beautiful new reality, filled with the warmth and truth of chosen family. In the days following the explosive dinner, my life transformed into a carefully managed storm. Headlines erupted across business publications, chronicling Aurora's record-breaking acquisition. Suddenly, my quiet, fiercely protected world was thrust into the spotlight, drawing admiration from industry leaders and investors alike, and intense scrutiny from my stepfamily, who scrambled desperately to rewrite the narrative to their advantage. Elaine and her lawyers sent sternly worded demands, hollow threats claiming they would challenge my rightful ownership of Caldwell Ventures. Daryl left frantic, pleading voicemails, insisting it was all a misunderstanding, begging for reconciliation. Bonnie's attempts were more subtle, a stream of carefully crafted texts filled with empty apologies and promises of family unity. Yet with each overture I felt a quiet clarity strengthening within me. They had lost the power to manipulate me, to control my emotions or decisions. My response was consistent and firm: silence. I established an unwavering boundary, closing the door completely on their attempts at re-entry. Jonah carefully handled legal matters, reinforcing ironclad protections around my inheritance. "You're fully secure now," he reassured me, his calm presence a welcome anchor. "They can't touch you or Caldwell Ventures ever again." But boundaries weren't only legal, they were deeply personal. I carefully curated my public statements, calmly addressing Aurora's success without ever mentioning my stepfamily. They'd spent years defining my narrative. Now I reclaimed my story by simply refusing to acknowledge their existence. Each carefully chosen word, each quiet refusal to engage, became a testament to my reclaimed strength and independence. One evening, Elaine appeared unexpectedly at the apartment lobby, her desperation palpable. Security called up cautiously, unsure of my wishes. I paused only briefly before quietly, firmly declining her request to speak. Watching her walk away defeated through the security monitor felt strangely peaceful. A quiet acknowledgement that she no longer wielded influence over my choices or emotions. As weeks passed, my new boundaries solidified into a fortress. Quietly, but firmly, I guarded my newfound independence and emotional space, refusing to let their manipulative attempts breach my peace. At first it felt strange, almost selfish, prioritizing my own well-being above their incessant demands. Yet slowly, the discomfort faded, replaced by a profound sense of empowerment and self-respect. My friends applauded my resolve, offering gentle encouragement and support. Mia squeezed my hand reassuringly one evening, her voice full of quiet pride. "You've built something amazing here, Sheryl. Not just Aurora, but your boundaries, your peace. They tried to break you, but you've quietly risen above it all." Her words resonated deeply. I had indeed risen, not by confronting my stepfamily with revenge, but by carefully, purposefully establishing boundaries that honored my true worth. I had quietly reclaimed control, and with it came the calm certainty that no matter how fiercely the storm raged around me, my quiet strength would remain unbreakable. The legacy my father had entrusted to me was never meant to be a battleground. It was a quiet promise of integrity, responsibility, and compassion. In the months following Aurora's monumental acquisition, I resolved to transform Caldwell Ventures into something far greater than a mere trophy of personal victory. It would stand as a beacon, a testament to the values my father quietly embodied, and the lessons I'd learned from years spent silently navigating the shadows. Channeling Aurora's newfound resources and visibility, I established the Hugh Caldwell Foundation, dedicated to empowering entrepreneurs whose potential had been quietly overlooked or dismissed. Those whose strength and innovation deserved recognition, but rarely received it. The foundation would not simply hand out checks. Instead, it would offer mentoring, resources, and genuine guidance, nurturing businesses rooted in authenticity and quiet brilliance. My friends eagerly joined in, contributing their time, passion, and expertise. Raylene, now a renowned figure in the tech industry thanks to Aurora's earlier partnership with Nimbus, enthusiastically volunteered to mentor young startups. Jonah oversaw legal frameworks ensuring lasting impact and accountability. Mia brought her exceptional strategic vision, quietly shaping the foundation's outreach programs and community partnerships. One afternoon, as I stood quietly before a packed auditorium at our first major event, facing hundreds of hopeful, determined faces, I felt a powerful sense of purpose surging within me. Here were people whose dreams had often been dismissed or mocked by others, people who quietly persevered despite constant rejection, much like myself. Their stories resonated deeply, echoes of my own quiet journey. "My father taught me something valuable," I said, my voice calm yet vibrant with conviction. He believed that quiet strength, genuine integrity, and authentic purpose were far more powerful than flashy displays of status. He entrusted me with his legacy because he understood these truths, and today, through this foundation, we honor that legacy, your legacy, by nurturing the quiet strength that others often overlook. The audience erupted into heartfelt applause, the genuine warmth resonating deeply within me. Each handshake afterward, each grateful smile, was a quiet validation of the purpose I'd found through reclaiming my story and legacy on my own terms. News of the foundation's success quickly spread, the Caldwell name gradually transforming in public perception from one associated with superficial wealth and drama to one synonymous with integrity, compassion, and genuine impact. Ironically, this quiet transformation meant more to me than any recognition my stepfamily had desperately pursued through empty displays of status. Late one evening, standing alone in the apartment overlooking Central Park, my father's quiet sanctuary, I felt an overwhelming sense of peace and gratitude. I'd taken what could have been a bitter story of betrayal and rewritten it into one of hope, compassion, and quiet triumph. My legacy, once overshadowed by resentment and manipulation, now stood quietly powerful, defined entirely by authenticity, integrity, and genuine impact. As I sat quietly in my father's favorite chair, looking out over Central Park bathed in gentle twilight, I reflected deeply on the turbulent journey that had brought me here. My entire life, I had quietly fought to prove my worth, seeking acknowledgement from those who stubbornly refused to grant it. I had hidden my successes, carefully protecting them from scrutiny and sabotage. But now, in the gentle stillness of this apartment, the sanctuary my father had trusted only to me, I finally understood a simple, powerful truth. My value had never depended on their validation. Elaine, Bonnie, and Daryl's cold rejection and calculated betrayals no longer had power over my identity or sense of self. Their cruelty, once a devastating wound, had become irrelevant. My worth was internal, quietly nurtured over years of resilience and quiet courage. The legacy my father left wasn't simply financial, it was emotional. A quiet reminder that strength wasn't about recognition from others, it was about integrity, authenticity, and compassion, even when unnoticed. In reclaiming my father's legacy, I had also reclaimed myself. My stepfamily's frantic attempts to repair their reputation had ultimately failed, their shallow apologies never breaching the new boundaries I'd firmly established. Occasionally, brief pangs of sadness touched me, not for lost relationships but for wasted potential. Yet, even this sadness quickly faded, replaced by a quiet acceptance of reality. Some relationships weren't meant to be reconciled. Some lessons were quietly powerful precisely because they had been painful. Now, as Aurora Solutions flourished, quietly reshaping the marketing world and empowering countless businesses, and as the Hugh Caldwell Foundation became a beacon for overlooked dreams, I felt profoundly fulfilled, not by fame or external validation, but by quiet authenticity, integrity, and genuine purpose. Tonight, in this peaceful solitude, I finally understood the depth of my father's quiet wisdom. He had known, long before I could, that true strength was not in outward appearances or public acknowledgement, but in quietly knowing and honoring your truth. The legacy he'd left wasn't a burden, it was a gift, a quiet path toward genuine self-validation and lasting peace. As I stood and gently walked toward the window, the glittering lights of the city below felt welcoming rather than intimidating. I had weathered the storm, quietly risen above their attempts to break me, and emerged stronger, clearer, and more authentically myself than ever before. My reflection smiled gently back at me from the window, calm and confident. I had become exactly who I was meant to be, not defined by family rejection or false validation, but quietly empowered, defined solely by my own truth. Finally, in that quiet certainty, I found true peace. Have you ever faced rejection from the people closest to you, only to discover your real strength hidden quietly within? Have you learned that your worth isn't determined by others, but by how authentically you live your truth? I'd love to hear your stories. Share your experiences in the comments below, because every story has power, especially when we realize we're not alone. If my journey resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs to hear that it's okay to define success on their own terms. Remember, validation from others will always come and go, but the quiet, powerful validation of knowing yourself that lasts forever, you deserve that peace. We all do. Reflect on your journey, embrace your truth, share your voice. Thank you for being here.